thanks everyone for coming. We're going to kind of show you essentially what the Gristleizer modules do, but first I'm going to hand over to Roy, who designed the kind of very first circuit back in the 70s, and Roy's going to give you kind of a story as to how this whole project kind of came into being, really, essentially.
Yeah. Well, the Gristleizer came out of an article in Practical Electronics called The Guitar Effects Pedal, which was written by a 15-year-old. That was me. And obviously some time ago now. And I did that. I got paid by Practical Electronics, thank you very much. And then I kind of forgot about it, moved on to other things. I was interested in synthesizers, and that was just... the Gristleizer is very synthesizer based, and I did that as a guitar effects pedal. So Chris Carter of Throbbing Gristle saw that Phonasonics were making kits of them. They were advertised in the back of Practical Electronics, and he made a dozen of them, and he used them in his band. He brought the bias control for the FET out to the front panel. I'd left it as a preset. But that was a very, very good move because it's an important control. And he called it the Gristleizer. I knew nothing of this. I'd never heard of Throbbing Gristle. It wasn't until 2007. I must confess I was Googling my own name. So very bad habits, but one does it occasionally. And there it was, and I thought, well, what's all this? So I dug a bit deeper and discovered that, completely unknown to me, this thing had taken on a life of its own. Hundreds of them have been made, and there was a sort of Gristleizer ecosystem all happening that I'd been completely unaware of. Out of that, I got in touch with Chris, or he got in touch with me, I forget, and we what did we do? There was a commercial build by a company whose name escapes me. EA,
Endangered Audio?
Yes, Endangered Audio, and we authorised that, and they signed it, and we got some freebies. But that's sort of, I thought it's not going any further than that. And then some people took the Gristleizer and dropped it into Eurorack, and they just took the original published design from 40 years ago and put it physically into the rack format. Chris was thinking of doing something similar and endorsing it, and when I got involved I thought, no, actually this isn't the right thing to do. The original Gristleizer doesn't need anything much doing to it, because it's a complete composite thing. It's got four elements: the preamp, the LFO, which can modulate a VCF or a VCA, but in its interfaces to the outside world, it's got one in and one out. It's a stomp box. When you bring something into the modular world, then it wouldn't make sense to just have an in and an out. You'd need to break it into the individual modules. So that's what we've done. It's not a closed standalone system anymore. It's a set of four modules. So it was deconstructed into its original parts, and then each of them re-implemented in a modern Eurorack synthesizer sort of way. We did the filter first, because the filter is the most important part of it, and the most important part of the filter is the FET. So the Gristleizer is all about JFETs and their characteristics and quirks. The original filter came from Wireless World Surcards. Here we go. Basic Active Filters, Series 1. And I bought that at the Audio Fair in Olympia in 1972, and I saw Card 8, which was a multi-feedback filter, which most importantly, the frequency of that filter could be controlled by a single resistor to ground. And so I thought, aha, I can use a FET for that and make it voltage controlled. And out of that sprang the guitar effects pedal, from which came the Gristleizer. There are some problems with just using a FET like that. It generates second harmonic distortion, and if you put half the signal between drain and source onto the gate, then you can null out that distortion. But at the tender age of 15, I knew nothing of that. It was just a voltage control resistor as far as I was concerned. It was rather fortuitous in a way, because part of the thing about the Gristleizer is it's not clean. No part of it is free of distortion, and a lot of it comes from the quirks of JFETs, of which this is one. So yeah, we did the filter. I've talked about that. Then in the in the Eurorack modulator, or the VCA, there's a control called DIRT. This actually addresses that second harmonic distortion issue directly. When it's in the middle, then that's exactly as classic Gristleizer. And as you turn it down to 0, it adds the required compensation to reduce the second harmonic distortion to 0. But of course it goes further than the middle, and as you turn it clockwise, it deliberately does completely the wrong thing to add more distortion. And that's the DIRT control. You could call it second harmonic, but DIRT is what it's really all about. So I was tempted to stop there. We'd done the filter and the modulator. The rest of it, there's an LFO and there's a preamp, and I thought, well, LFOs, there are loads of LFOs in modular. Why do we need to reinvent the wheel? We had a few goes in the end at doing an LFO, because it had to be sufficiently different from any other LFO to be worthwhile. And if you just take the original LFO out of the classic Gristleizer, it's not very exciting. It's just a standard synth sort of thing with 4 waveforms, and it was great for 1973, but it's not that exciting now. So we need to do better than that. It'd be nice to have voltage control morphing between waveforms. That was an early requirement. I wanted tap tempo, so that we looked into doing it in software, but that was just looking a bit like other tap tempo LFOs. So I thought, if you want tap tempo, buy an LFO that's got tap tempo. This one doesn't have it. We wanted sync. We've got sync in there. The original Gristleizer, because it's a time-based effect, you end up playing with it rather than it playing with you, and the synchronization, if it times to what you're putting in, means that you're controlling it rather than you have to keep time with it. So the LFO that we've done is based, I got one from, what are they called? Where am I? Pittsburgh Modular. Their LFO2, it's got 2 LFOs, and the one that I particularly liked has a wave shape that goes from a ramp like that through triangle in the middle to a ramp like that on one control. And I had a go at voltage controlling that, but it got out of hand. It was just way too complicated. So the basic core of the LFO is like that, with a continuously variable rising ramp, triangle, falling ramp. And that goes into a wave folder. And the wave folder is a very easy way of getting voltage control of all the wave shapes. So it's a Lockhart wave folder. So it just from a triangle wave, it'll take the top and notch that down to the bottom, or the same thing the other way up. And so if as a gain of 1, the triangle in goes to triangle out, and if you've got a gain of 2, then you end up with a triangle wave that's 3 times the frequency. It's one of those. And that's all voltage controllable. So I got my desired voltage control of waveform. Wasn't quite the way I expected, but it's quite effective. So have we finished? Well, the preamp. There are preamps. Befico make one. There's the A109 from Doepfer. And can we do a preamp that is unique and special? Well, it was originally a guitar effects pedal, and so what we've done is a guitar preamp. It's not an instrument preamp. It's quite specifically for electric guitar. The preamp looks, in terms of function, not unlike a Marshall JCM 800. It's re-implemented in FETs, but the basic tone shaping and distortion is exactly the same. So a classic guitar amplifier, and the tone stack is also straight out of Marshall. So the tone controls act exactly as you would expect a guitar amplifier to handle. On the side, it's got voltage control of gain. The important how hard you push the preamp, and so what distortion you get, is voltage controllable. And that has some uses which I'll come to. And then there's the monitoring section, the envelope detector. This is an RMS level detector with a logarithmic output, and so you've got an envelope follower and both a positive and a negative one, and a gate and trigger extractor, which pick out the beginnings of notes, and that's to drive an ADSR. That took quite a bit of fiddling around with to get just right on picking out notes. So it will notice you can pick notes, you can hammer notes, or you can play chords and then play them again, and you get a trigger on that second one, and there should be no false re-triggering if I've done my job right. I'm quite pleased with the extractor. The guitar amp signal path, I had some help from my good friend Johnny Reckless. He used to work for Trace Elliott and has done guitar amps professionally. Quite a lot of the signal path is inspired by things that he's done, and the monitoring path is my doing. And those 4 modules comprise the Gristleizer that we're selling today.
Fantastic. So, first of all, does anyone have any questions? I'm obviously going to show you some, patches with this, but any immediate kind of go-to questions from anyone?
The guitar preamp,
yeah,
with a bit of attenuation, can you abuse it with synth level?
Yeah, so there's also
completely square, or do you just need a bit of level on the way in?
There's a line input on the preamp as well, so you can feed not only guitar. It does work with like a dynamic mic as well, so you can kind of feed a mic through there and get a nice kind of crunchy mic sound. But yeah, I'm gonna kind of demo we've got Korg Volca beats here as well. We can feed any kind of line level straight in, use all the tone controls, use the gain, and also use the envelope detection on there as well with kind of line levels. So
the guitar input is 1 mega ohm input impedance, classic guitar stuff, and the line level input is 20 dB attenuation, break jack. So when you haven't got a guitar plugged in, the line in is active, and that will take synth level or line level.
Yeah.
cool.
Let's hear it.
Fantastic. So, just starting out with real basics, I've got a kind of sawtooth pulse wave kind of thing coming from Braids that's variable, and that's just going into the filter at the minute. So, keeping that quite clean, I've got the little drive control here about 9 o'clock. I can sweep that and kind of get this quite growly bandpass kind of sound out of it. But then when I start to drive the filter, this is where it gets really crunchy and really interesting. So you start to get this kind of bottom end out of it that's really nice. Can we get a bit more level on the PA? Is that alright? We've also added resonance and register controls, so you can get the resonance to really squeal as well as you're driving it quite hard. And then the register control actually shifts around the resonant frequency of the filter core. So as Roy was saying, we've got this multi-feedback
I think that's
filter
what
core.
it's called.
Yeah, and we can shift essentially where that resonates, so we get this kind of interesting, again, quite vocal effect out of it.
Does that form a kind of dual peak in the resonance?
I think it's a single peak.
There should only be one.
Yeah, but it's again, with a lot of that distortion and what's going on with the JFET stage, it does.
It almost sounds like forming.
When you push it, you'll hear the harmonics moving as well.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can then modulate that. So I'm going to connect to the CV2 input. Let's first take just the straight ramp output from the generator module. You'll hear we've got quite a nice sweep on that. I'll bring the drive all the way up and start bringing the resonance up as well. I'm playing with the register now. Gives us all kinds of interesting, bubbly, slightly vocal effects. And on the generator I can shift the shape around. Get a kind of descending ramp through to the ascending ramp. So what we'll then do is, at the moment, I'll just switch the input and output over to the modulator, which is essentially the VCA. So we've named it the modulator after amplitude modulation. And taking the dirt down, you'll hear that we get quite a clean kind of VCA response from that. I'm just tweaking the bias there. If I start bringing the dirt up, it gets more and more kind of, get harder edge. Until you get quite a harsh kind of cut-off on the VCA action. So again, we can take that ramp waveform into the CV and essentially drive the VCA like that. I'll bring the bias up just to extend the range of that and maybe bring the CV down. And then if we bring the filter back in, so we've now got braids just running through the filter and the modulator. We start to really get into essentially the back end of a synth voice. So if I then modulate the filter frequency with the fold output of the generator, you can hear that we're getting all of those interesting wave shapes out of the wave folder. We also have a pulse output from the wave folder as well, which is essentially a clipped version of the fold output. So we can get quite interesting alternating patterns that's useful for clocking other things as well.
So does the pulse width change on that as the fold changes?
Yes, and also
effectively.
yeah, and also the shape as well. So you can kind of hear that filter is now alternating with a different pattern as I shift the shape of the ramp around. And obviously we can go deeper into how we use the generator, so we can take it up to audio levels.
What's the peak voltage on
Is it 10 to 10 peak to peak, or 5 to 5 peak to peak? 5 to 5. And then the clock output, I believe, is 0 to 5, isn't it? Yeah. So it's pretty hot. So we can also, if we just listen to the actual output of the generator now in the audio range, we'll listen to the fold output. First, we can get some really nice tones out of this. I'm actually just going to use this other generator that I've got up here to modulate the gain of the folder. And we can also control the LFO from a 1 volt per octave source. Essentially use it as a bass oscillator. So not only can you use the generator for modulating, or any other Eurorack module, but the filter and the amplitude modulator, but we can also actually pass that signal through the filter and the modulator, which sounds, so now I'm going to take the pulse output of the generator. I'll just play you a little bit of that first, just to get it dry. So that's what we get from the pulse output of the wave folder. And then passing that through the filter and the modulator gives us so it's pretty dirty. We can drive the VCA as well, drive the modulator.
that sounds thick enough to be 2 oscillators, but it is actually 1.
Yes, yeah. So, so we're quite pleased with that. You can only take the generator up to a certain point. I think we're looking at about 500 hertz at the moment, aren't we? Until it starts to kind of clip at the frequency control. But
it wasn't intended to be an audio oscillator, but it does quite a bit.
Yes, yeah.
A comment in one of the reviews of the classic Gristleizer was it goes from zombie slow to psycho fast. So that was my specification for the frequency range of this one. 500 I think is psycho fast, and it goes down to about 1 cycle every 20 seconds or so.
So we'll move on to the preamp now. So just playing a guitar through, probably quite badly. As you can hear, it already sounds quite nice and warm and kind of what you'd expect from one of those old guitar amps, but we can bring the gain right up and also use this bite control to give us a bit kind of like dirtied up top end essentially. And we've got the tone stack as well, which is really nice and versatile. So we also have a boost control, so I can just flip that on for more drive as well. Then really crank the gain. So it's a really nice, essentially guitar preamp. But I mean, we'll play some other sources through it later. One really nifty feature having the gain voltage controllable and having these envelope outputs is that you can also essentially use this as a compressor and an expander. So what I'm going to do first is just use the positive envelope going into the gain CV, then bringing the gain CV control all the way up. So you'll hear now that I've essentially got a gate. So there's no noise there when I'm not playing. If I take that off and then bring the gain up, there's a bit of noise. So you can change how the envelope is reacting with the sensitivity control here. So if I bring the sensitivity all the way down, not getting any envelope out, so I'm pretty much gating all the way. And if I bring it all the way up, I've essentially got a constant envelope, so it's a very kind of almost square on and off gating effect. So then if I bring the envelope output to the inverted version, I turn it essentially into a compressor. So if I bring the gain all the way up, you'll hear as soon as I play a note, we're then ducking all the way. And that's with the sensitivity all the way. If I bring that down, so again, you get quite a lot of kind of sustain out of that, which is really nice. So of course what we can then do is take the guitar output, not only just the audio but also the control, and feed that to other modules. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do something a bit funky and take the clock input of this frequency central clock divider, feed it into the master output here, so we've got all the grit and the crunch and the tone controls. And then we'll pass the divided by 2 output into the filter, the Gristleizer filter, and then that through the Gristleizer modulator back into this mixer. So hopefully if I start bringing the gain up now, you'll see that we've got all the LEDs on the clock divider flashing. If I bring the bias up on the modulator and the drive up on the filter, there we go. So we're getting that kind of classic kind of octave down thing, and then if I change the tone controls to round off some of the top end, if I drive the filter, so we get all of that kind of really nice fuzzy synth guitar kind of sound. We can use all of these outputs from this clock divider as well to then modulate the filter and the VCA. weird kind of strange octave modulation kind of things. So that gives you quite a lot of just sonic possibility, and obviously you can, bash that into any other Eurorack module. We can also use the gate and trig output here to then gate off some of these envelopes. So, for example, I could then take the CV from the envelope here, put that into the VCA, and essentially change the actual transient of the guitar tone. So I'm going to keep that really super dirty kind of growling thing, but then set this. So at the moment we've got a really sharp decay on that envelope, and you can hear as I'm playing a note, I'm just getting that kind of transient out. Kind of like that. But we can also then do obviously long sweeps with it. That's the wrong envelope. And bring the sustain up. Like that kind of thing. So it's just really versatile, and it's a really good way if you've got, either if you're in a band and you've got a guitarist and they want some kind of way of getting into a Eurorack system, that's really good. If you're a guitarist yourself and you want to, just absolutely mangle the guitar itself, you can do that. There's so many things that are there and kind of like hidden, and we're still kind of bouncing ideas back and forth as to how you can implement this stuff. And then just to kind of finish off before we start taking some questions, I'll just show you some of the preamp's capabilities taking in a line level. So I've got this Volca here. I'll just get the hi-hats going as well. So as you can hear, it's already quite a nice warm sound. We've got all the tone controls that we might want. You can boost it. So now you can really start to hear that crunch. And then we can take the inverted envelope out, plug that into the gain CV. And then we can really heavily compress that. So, but of course as well, depending on how you set the sensitivity, you can take the gate output. So if you've got things like drum machines and you don't necessarily want to run straight triggers, you want to do some more interesting things, you could run sequences off that gate signal. Again, there's all sorts of possibilities that you can do. You can run other Eurorack sources through that. I could have, say, something playing on radio music like Chris was doing yesterday, take that through the preamps, give it a bit more colour, compress it, gate it, do whatever, and then, just throw it around the system. So yeah. So that's pretty much kind of what the Gristleizer series really does. That's the entirety of the 4 modules, I think, covered in a short little demo. Has anyone got any questions for us or any burning thoughts?
When are you shipping?
We're shipping in November, so these at the moment are pretty much just pre-production models. We're hoping to go into production as soon as possible. The main things that are going to change are just aesthetic things. All the functionality is staying the same. So we're going to change the panels up a little bit. I think the clean and the master outputs here on the preamp are switching over, and things like LED placement might change. It's really nothing particularly huge.
What are you looking at? Pricing?
So at the moment, on our pre-order, we've got the filter and the modulator, the VCA. Those are at $150 each. The generator LFO is at $200, and then the preamp is at $250.
I noticed on Chris's group yesterday, you had VCO.
Yes.
Is that like a kind of special thing for him, or is it something led into the generator and other things?
That's essentially that was, as Roy was saying earlier.
One of the early versions that got to a pre-production, then we decided to go with a different sort of generator.
Yeah.
So we won't be making any more of those.
Okay.
Are you going to sell them as a complete set?
We are looking at doing, we've had a few questions. These go from TG2 to TG5. We've missed off TG1 for doing a very limited edition, kind of everything behind one panel version, having it fully signed and stuff, and it's going to look a little bit different. But that will be a seriously limited run. We're yet to announce it on the website officially, but that will be coming soon. We've just got to kind of iron out the final aesthetic details, essentially, stuff like that.
I was looking on your site last night about chaining two of the VCS together. Have you done that?
Let's give it a go now. Actually, we haven't. Yeah. That's one thing we haven't done all weekend. So
that sounds like the sort of thing I have.
Yeah. So talking to Roy yesterday. How long ago was it that you were playing with kind of several of these filters in parallel, doing things like that with it?
Oh, this goes back, I think 2009.
Okay.
I was dabbling with the idea of a Gristleizer reissue, and I got rather sidetracked into doing the filter differently, and I ended up with three of them in parallel, single signal source, split that way, three filters, and then mix them together, so you've got three peaks that you can move around. And then I was playing around with vocal formants and looking up the three filters will give you a very vocal sound if you move them in the right way. Then I had a table lookup for male, female, and child voice for the formant frequencies. What really stopped it was that it needed software, and that takes time to write, and I never quite got there, which is why the 2009 reissue did not meet its release date. Still hasn't got any further than that.
Sometimes things like that happen for a reason.
So that's two of them in parallel now, just with braids running off, so can get pretty... Sounds like throat singing, doesn't it, actually? Yeah. So, again, we can modulate both of those ever so slightly. And that'll probably sound quite tasty, I imagine. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, that kind of thing is very much doable. Cool.
You just have to buy enough filters.
Yes, yeah.
Are we looking at sort of like width-wise?
So the filter and the modulator are 8 HP each. The generator is 10 and the preamp is 14. If you add all those numbers together, I guess you get the special edition one. But again, we haven't quite worked it out yet. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit. I mean, it's it's wide, but there's a lot of functionality there. So no worries.
Well, we'll leave this hooked up for the PA for a little bit before we swap over to Rob Hordyke, getting some swing and life and soul into a synth patch. Some really nice ideas there. We'll leave this hooked up for a little bit. I'm going to swap cameras over and things. Feel free to come and have a play, ask more questions for 10 minutes or so.
Thanks a lot.
So yeah, cheers guys.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Cheers, man. Thank you.